Queen Muhumuza, the African woman who defied empires and inspired Nyabingi. Queen Muhumuza, also recorded as Muhumuza Niragahumusa or Muserakande, was a powerful East African spiritual leader, political organizer, and anti-colonial resistance commander. She became one of the most influential leaders associated with the Nyabingi spiritual movement in the regions now known as Rwanda and Uganda. Some traditions describe Muhumuza as a wife or widow of Rwanda's King Kigeli IV Rwabugiri and the mother of a possible royal successor. Although historians continue to debate the exact details of her royal connections, there is no dispute about the authority she commanded among the people. After political conflict and succession struggles in Rwanda, Muhumuza established herself in the Mpororo and Kigezi region. There, she became recognized as a spiritual medium connected to Nyabingi, a sacred female spirit associated with justice, protection, resistance, and political authority. For Muhumuza, spirituality was not separated from liberation. She used her spiritual leadership to unite farmers, warriors, women, displaced families, and communities resisting local oppression and European colonial expansion. Her movement challenged African rulers who cooperated with colonial governments, as well as German and British forces attempting to dominate the region. Muhumuza's influence became so powerful that colonial authorities considered her a major threat. German officials arrested her in 1908 and imprisoned her at Bukoba. After her release, she resumed organizing resistance. In 1911, British and German colonial forces cooperated in military action against her movement. Two European empires united against one African woman. After an armed confrontation, Muhumuza was captured and taken to Kampala. She remained under colonial detention or house arrest for the remainder of her life. Although they imprisoned her body, they could not destroy the movement she represented. Nyabingi resistance continued through other leaders and communities inspired by her example. Muhumuza, Jamaica, and Rastafari Nyabingi. Queen Muhumuza was not Jamaican, and there is no reliable evidence that she personally traveled to Jamaica or directly taught Jamaican spiritual leaders. However, her name, the Nyabingi tradition, and stories of East African resistance later became connected to the development of Nyabingi spirituality within the Rastafari movement in Jamaica. Information about Muhumuza and the Nyabingi resistance likely traveled beyond East Africa through colonial newspapers, international reports, Pan-African networks, Garveyite organizations, and stories celebrating African opposition to European rule. In Jamaica, the name was commonly written Nyabingi. It became associated with one of the principal traditions, or mansions, of Rastafari. Jamaican Nyabingi developed its own distinct religious and cultural expression, including sacred drumming, chanting, communal gatherings, biblical interpretation, African-centered identity, reverence for Haile Selassie I, and resistance to colonial oppression, often represented by Rastafari as Babylon. The Jamaican tradition was therefore not an exact continuation of Muhumuza's East African movement. It was a new spiritual expression shaped by Jamaica's history, African memory, Pan-Africanism, Black liberation, and Rastafari theology. Yet the connection remains historically significant. The name Nyabingi carried the spirit of an African woman-led resistance movement across the Atlantic. Muhumuza's struggle became part of a wider Black international tradition that linked African sovereignty, spiritual power, and opposition to colonial domination. DTOA, Legacy. Queen Muhumuza demonstrated that African spirituality could serve as a foundation for organized political resistance. She confronted kings, colonial governments, military forces, and foreign religious authority. She transformed spiritual leadership into a movement for dignity, sovereignty, and liberation. Her influence did not end with her imprisonment. Her name and the Nyabingi tradition continued in East Africa and later echoed within Jamaican Rastafari culture, where Nyabingi became associated with sacred drumming, African consciousness, unity, and resistance against oppression. Queen Muhumuza was more than a priestess. She was a strategist, revolutionary, resistance commander, spiritual leader, mother, and defender of African sovereignty. They captured her body, but they could not capture her mission. Honor Queen Muhumuza, the African woman whose resistance challenged two empires and whose spiritual legacy crossed the Atlantic to inspire generations.